I ignored my father's last 3 calls. An emotional story inspired by Die with a Smile. I ignored my father's last 3 phone calls. The first one was easy. I was driving home from work, tired, hungry, and already thinking about what I was going to eat for dinner. His name appeared on my screen. I looked at it. Then I let it ring. Nothing unusual about that. We hadn't had a real conversation in years. The second call came while I was eating takeout on my couch. I remember picking up my phone, staring at his name, waiting for some reason to answer, then putting it back down. Again. Nothing unusual. At least that's what I thought. The third call came at 8:43 p.m. This time, I silenced it. Not declined. Not answered. Just silence. As if that somehow made me a better son. A minute later, my aunt called. I answered immediately. Funny how that works. The people we avoid always seem to be the ones we think will still be there tomorrow. "Hey," she said. And instantly, I knew something was wrong. Not because of what she said. Because of how she said it. People carry bad news differently. You can hear it in their breathing. In the pauses between words. In the way they avoid getting to the point. "What's going on?" I asked. There was a silence. Then another. Then she finally spoke. "Your dad's in the hospital." My stomach dropped. What happened? Heart failure. I stood up so quickly that my drink spilled across the table. I didn't even notice. "Is he okay?" Another pause. This one felt longer. "No." Just one word. "No." It's strange how one word can completely rearrange your world. I started pacing around my apartment. Kitchen. Living room. Kitchen again. As if moving would somehow help me think. When did this happen? This afternoon. And nobody told me. He didn't want us to. That stopped me. What? He said not to call you. I laughed. A short, confused laugh. The kind people make when reality doesn't make sense. Why would he do that? My aunt sighed. Then she said something I'll never forget. He didn't want to bother you. I don't know why that hurt so much. Maybe because after everything. After years of missed birthdays, awkward holidays, and conversations that never lasted more than a few minutes. He still thought of me before himself. Or maybe because deep down, I knew I'd been doing the exact opposite. I sat down. For the first time since the call started, I stopped moving. He called me 3 times. I know. I didn't answer. I know. I covered my face with one hand. The room suddenly felt too quiet. Too small. Too heavy. He keeps asking about you. I closed my eyes. What do you mean? He wakes up and asks if you've called. The guilt hit me so hard I had to look away, even though nobody was there to see me. He thinks you're busy. Busy. Not angry. Not avoiding him. Not ignoring him. Busy. As if he was still making excuses for me. Protecting me. The same way parents do when their children disappoint them. My aunt took a deep breath. If you're coming, she stopped. I could hear people talking in the background. Hospital sounds. Footsteps. Machines. Distant voices. If you're coming, you should leave now. There it was. The sentence nobody wants to hear. Not because of what it means. Because of what it asks. It asks you to decide. Right now. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. I looked toward the front door. My keys were hanging on the wall. My jacket was draped over a chair. The hospital was 2 hours away. 2 hours. That's all. 2 hours between me and the man I hadn't truly spoken to in 8 years. The man who taught me how to ride a bike. The man who worked double shifts so I could go to college. The man I spent most of my adult life quietly resenting. Funny thing about resentment. If you leave it alone long enough, it starts feeling normal. You stop carrying it. It starts carrying you. My aunt was still talking. I barely heard her. My mind was somewhere else. Back in a small house 20 years earlier. Back when I was 8 years old. Back when my father was still the strongest person I'd ever known. I remembered sitting on his shoulders during a town festival. I remembered him teaching me how to throw a baseball. I remembered the smell of sawdust on his clothes after work. Memories I hadn't thought about in years suddenly came rushing back all at once. And for the first time that night, I wasn't thinking about the father I was angry at. I was thinking about the father I loved. The realization hit harder than the news itself. Because somewhere along the way, I'd spent so much time remembering the things he did wrong, that I'd forgotten the things he did right. My aunt's voice pulled me back. Are you still there? Yeah. My voice barely sounded like mine. Are you coming? I looked at my keys. Then at the dark window beside me. Then back at the floor. For years, I thought time was something I had plenty of. Plenty of time to call. Plenty of time to visit. Plenty of time to fix things. But standing there, with my father's life being measured in hours instead of years, I realized something. Time doesn't run out all at once. It disappears a little at a time. One missed call. One postponed visit. One conversation you swear you'll have later. Until one day, later arrives. And it's already too late. I grabbed my keys. Tell him I'm coming. Then I hung up. And for the first time in 8 years, I started driving toward my father. The drive should have taken 2 hours. At least that's what the GPS said. But grief has a strange relationship with time. Some moments disappear before you can hold on to them. Others stretch so long that a single minute feels like an entire year. That night, every mile felt heavier than the last. The highway was almost empty. Streetlights passed overhead one by one. The radio was playing something soft in the background, but I turned it off after a few minutes. I couldn't focus. Every thought eventually led back to the same question. What was I supposed to say when I got there? Sorry. For what? For not calling. For staying away. For allowing 8 years to pass because neither of us knew how to be the first one to reach out. The problem with apologies is that they sound simple until you actually need to say them. Then suddenly, there aren't enough words in the world. I stopped at a gas station about halfway through the drive. Not because I needed fuel. Because I needed a reason to stop thinking. The place was almost empty. Just an old cashier watching television behind the counter. A couple arguing quietly near the coffee machine. And a teenager sitting alone outside, staring at his phone. Normal people. Living normal lives. Completely unaware that somewhere down the highway, a man was trying to outrun 8 years of regret. I bought a bottle of water I didn't drink. Then got back into the car. As I pulled onto the road again, my phone buzzed. A message from my aunt. He's awake. That's all it said. 3 words. For some reason, they terrified me. Because now there was no hiding behind uncertainty. He was awake. Which meant there was still time. Time to speak. Time to listen. Time to say everything I'd spent years avoiding. And somehow, that felt harder than saying goodbye. The further I drove, the more memories surfaced. Not the bad ones. Not at first. The good ones. The ones I'd buried under years of frustration. I remembered being 10 years old and wanting a bicycle I knew we couldn't afford. A month later, it was sitting in the garage. I didn't understand how. Years later, Mom told me he'd worked every Sunday that month to pay for it. I remember the school presentation in 6th grade. Nobody else showed up. Not because their parents didn't care. Because it was the middle of a workday. But somehow, my father was there. Still wearing his work boots. Still covered in dust. Still smiling from the back row. I remembered pretending not to care. Kids do that sometimes. We act embarrassed by the people who love us the most. I never thanked him for showing up. Not once. The realization sat in my chest like a stove. How many moments had I forgotten? How many sacrifices had become invisible simply because they happened so often? Somewhere around midnight, it started raining. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to blur the windshield. Just enough to make the world outside feel distant. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. And that's when the memory I hated most finally arrived. The fight? The one that changed everything. The one neither of us ever recovered from. I was 21. A year away from graduation. I had just told him I wanted to pursue architecture. Not engineering. Not business. Architecture. My dream. He hated it immediately. Not because he thought I wasn't capable. Because he thought I was making a mistake. You'll struggle, he told me. I'll figure it out. You think life works like that? No. I think fear is making this decision for you. The second those words left my mouth, I knew I'd crossed a line. My father stared at me. Silent. Then he stood up. And for the first time in my life, I saw disappointment in his eyes. Not anger. Disappointment. Looking back, I think that hurt both of us more. We argued for nearly an hour. Neither of us listened. Neither of us understood. Two stubborn men trying to win instead of trying to connect. By the end of it, we'd stopped talking about careers entirely. We were talking about everything else. Years of frustration. Years of expectations. Years of things neither of us knew how to say properly. Then he said something that stayed with me for almost a decade. One day you'll understand why I work. And I said something even worse. Something I wished I could take back from the moment it left my mouth. Maybe one day you'll understand why I stopped listening. Silence. That's what followed. Not shouting. Not another argument. Just silent. The kind that feels permanent. I moved out 3 months later. And after that, our relationship slowly became a collection of holiday greetings and short phone calls. The kind people mistake for connection. The kind that lets you pretend everything is okay. Even when it isn't. Rain tapped softly against the windshield. The hospital was less than 30 minutes away now. My heart felt like it was beating in my throat. I kept replaying that final argument over and over. Searching for the exact moment things broke. The exact sentence. The exact mistake. As if finding it would somehow change what happened. But that's the thing about regret. It always convinces you the past was fixable. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. The truth is, none of that mattered anymore. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't driving toward an argument. I wasn't driving toward a problem. I wasn't driving toward the father who disappointed me. I was driving toward a man running out of time. And suddenly, all the reasons I'd spent years staying away felt embarrassingly small. The hospital sign appeared through the rain. My chest tightened. I pulled into the parking lot and turned off the engine. The silence that followed was overwhelming. For a moment, I just sat there. Hands on the steering wheel. Heart racing. Terrified. Not of losing him. That fear had already arrived hours ago. I was terrified of something else. What if I walked into that room and still didn't know how to tell my father that I loved him? The hospital smelled exactly the way hospitals always do. Too clean. Too quiet. Too aware of things most people spend their lives trying not to think about. I walked through the front doors and immediately forgot where I was supposed to go. My aunt had told me the room number. Twice. Maybe 3 times. I still had to check my phone. My hands were shaking. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Just enough for me to feel it. The elevator ride lasted less than a minute. It felt like 10. When the doors opened, I saw my aunt sitting alone in the hallway. She stood up the moment she saw me. Then she hugged me. Neither of us said anything. There wasn't much left to say. "How is he?" I finally asked. She looked toward the roof. Then back at me. "He's tired." I nodded. "Is he awake?" A small smile appeared on her face. "Barely." Then she squeezed my shoulder. "He's been waiting for you." Those 6 words hit harder than anything I'd heard that night. He's been waiting for you. Not angry. Not disappointed. Not resentful. Waiting. The same way parents wait when their children are late coming home. The same way they wait when they're learning how to walk. The same way they wait through every mistake, every failure, every phase of life. Waiting. I look at the hospital room door. And suddenly, I didn't want to open it. Because once I did, there would be no more excuses. No more someday. No more later. Just the truth. My aunt must have seen it on my face. "You should go in." I nodded. Then stood there for another 5 seconds anyway. Funny thing about courage. People think it feels powerful. Most of the time, it just feels like taking a step while you're scared. So that's what I did. I took a step. Then another. Then I opened the door. The room was darker than I expected. A small lamp glowed in the corner. Machines hummed quietly beside the bed. And there he was. My father. For a moment, I didn't recognize him. Not because he looked different. Because he looked smaller. The strongest man I'd ever known suddenly seemed fragile. Human. Old. He turned his head slightly when he heard the door. His eyes found mine. And for a few seconds, neither of us spoke. 8 years. 8 years of distance. 8 years of missed opportunities. 8 years of words left unsaid. And somehow, the only thing he managed to say was, "You made it." That's it. Not, "Where have you been?" Not, "Why didn't you call?" Not, "I'm disappointed in you." Just, "You made it." I laughed. Then immediately started crying. The kind of crying you spend years trying to avoid. The ugly kind. The honest kind. The kind that happens when your heart finally gets tired of pretending. My father smiled weakly. "I guess you're still emotional." I shook my head. "I get that from Mom." That made him laugh. And for the first time all night, the room felt lighter. I pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down. For a while, neither of us said much. Just small things. How work was going. How Mom was doing. How terrible the hospital food was. Normal conversation. Ordinary conversation. The kind we'd been missing for years. Then eventually, the silence returned. Not uncomfortable silence. Just silent. And in that silence, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Maybe I hadn't been for a long time. Maybe I just gotten used to carrying it. My father stared at the ceiling. You know, his voice was weaker now. I used to tell everyone about you. I looked up. What? A faint smile appeared on his face. The buildings. I frowned. What buildings? The ones you design. I couldn't help laughing. You don't even know what I design. I know enough. I looked down at my hands. Suddenly feeling like a child again. You hated architecture. No. His answer came immediately. No, I didn't. I stared at him. 4 years. I'd believed exactly that. You said it was a mistake. I said I was scared. The room went quiet again. Then he sighed. He paused, searching for the words. You spend so much time worrying about your children getting hurt, that sometimes you forget they're supposed to live their own lives. I couldn't speak. Because suddenly, I understood. Not everything. Not every mistake. Not every argument. But enough. Enough to see him clearly. Not as my father. As a person. A flawed person. Trying his best with information he didn't have. Just like me. His eyes slowly drifted toward mine. And then he said the words I'd waited my entire life to hear. Not because he never felt them. Because neither of us ever knew how to say them. I'm proud of you. 3 words. That's all. 3 words. And somehow, they carried the weight of an entire lifetime. I looked away because I couldn't stop crying. 30 years old. Crying in a hospital room. Like a kid. Like a son. Like someone finally receiving a gift he'd stopped expecting. My father smiled. I should have said that sooner. Yeah. I laughed through my tears. You probably should have. We both laughed. Then neither of us said anything for a while. There wasn't a need to. Because some conversations aren't about the words. They're about finally being present for them. Around 3 in the morning, he started getting tired. His eyes closed more often. His voice became softer. The nurses came in and out. Adjusting machines. Checking monitors. Speaking in quiet voices. Eventually, he looked at me and smiled. The same smile I remembered from childhood. The same one from baseball games. School presentations. Birthday parties. All of it. Get some sleep, he whispered. I shook my head. I'm staying. His smile widened slightly. Then he nodded. Good. A few minutes later, he fell asleep. And sometime before sunrise, he was gone. Peacefully. Quietly. Without pain. I wish I could tell you I handled it well. I didn't. I cried. I broke down. I sat beside that bed for hours. But beneath all that grief, there was something else. Something unexpected. Gratitude. Because out of all the possible endings we could have had, we got that one. One conversation. One night. One chance to tell the truth. People think Die with a Smile is about spending your last moments with the person you love. Maybe they're right. But after that night, I think it means something else too. I think it means leaving nothing important unsaid. Not because life is short. Because life is unpredictable. We always think there'll be another phone call. Another holiday. Another opportunity. Until there isn't. Sometimes. The people we love don't need grand gestures. They don't need perfect words. They don't need us to fix the past. Sometimes they just need us to show up. To answer. To stay. It's been 3 years since that night. And every now and then, I still scroll through my old phone. Those 3 missed calls are still there. I could delete them. I never do. Because they remind me of something important. Not my biggest regret. My biggest lesson. The lesson being this. Love isn't measured by how long someone stays. It's measured by whether they knew how much they mattered before they left. And if my father could hear me now, I'd finally say the thing I should have said years ago. Not in a hospital room. Not at a funeral. Not after it was almost too late. I'd say it when it mattered. I'd say, "Thanks for waiting for me." And I'd say, "I love you too."